Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, sometimes we need to take a closer look at the costs, the human costs that art can extract from people. And, as always, if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening. Hit subscribe. Give us a like, give us the old 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're pretty much everywhere over at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, we're on the Twitter, we're on the Instagram, we're on the TikTok, and we're on the Letterboxd for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because, if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it even more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So do us the kindness and please pay us a visit. On this episode, we got an award-winning film from the last version of Cannes, the In Certain Regard Award. It opened in New York a couple of weeks ago. It opened in LA this past weekend. The film is called The Worst Ones, and it's really a fascinating piece because it's set in the suburbs of Boulogne-Sur-Mer in northern France, and it's a film within a film as it follows the production of a feature whose director turns to the local housing project for casting, eager to capture performances of gritty authenticity and sort of being very natural and using non-actors, as it were. And the director selects 4 working-class teenagers to act in the film. And it doesn't go over super well with the local community, as they're questioning the director's choice of these kids who are basically the worst or pretending to be the worst ones, and how it's reflecting on the community. And as we see the director and the crew and everyone go through the motions with their cast, we see how jealousies can get stoked, and we see the lines get crossed, and we can see a myriad of ethical questions come up. And it's a film it's thought-provoking, it's funny, but it's really touching on some fascinating stuff that goes on in everyday life. And we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with the directors and writers of the film, Lise Akoka and Romane Gueret, along with the help of a translator. That'll be a third voice, because they don't speak that much English. But we talked about the origins of the film, why they wanted to make it, their experiences in the industry as casting directors, and so very, very, very much more. But The Worst Ones is playing in New York and Los Angeles now, and undoubtedly rolling out to other cities in in upcoming weeks. But first, enjoy our talk with Lise and Romane, because between you and me, it's a darn good one. All right, well, obviously, first off, just to start it off, ladies, thank you so much for the time, and congratulations, félicitations on the film. It is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, walk me through the origin of wanting to tell this story on your end.
Donc, on commence avec les origines de pourquoi vous avez voulu raconter cette histoire.
Ok. Alors, on était toutes les deux directrices de casting et on s'est rencontrées en faisant le casting enfant d'un film. Et c'est comme ça qu'on a eu envie d'écrire notre premier court-métrage qui parle du casting sauvage, Chasse royale. Et Les Pires, c'est la prolongation de ce court-métrage. Donc, on a eu envie de continuer à développer ces questions-là sur l'éthique du casting sauvage et sur ce que c'est pour un enfant qui n'a pas voulu être acteur de jouer dans un film et raconter cette rencontre possible ou avortée.
So both of us were casting directors, and we met while we were casting together on a film, on a feature film, and we developed the desire to write our first short that talks about street casting. The title was Chasse Royale, and the worst ones is just the continuation of that short. So we had the desire to develop our thoughts on the ethics of street castings and what it means for a child who didn't volunteer to be an actor to end up playing in a movie, and to discuss that meeting, whether successful or not.
For sure. For sure. I mean, I think that's really what makes this film so special, because on one end, you're obviously taking great care and great respect to the emotions of the characters and what they're going through during this entire process. But you're also shining a real light on the borderline absurdity of the nature of what these characters have to go through, and almost what you've put yourselves into as you're making the film. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the duality of this story? Because on one end, it's this very emotional drama, but on the other end, it's almost a documentary.
Donc, est-ce que vous pouvez parler un peu de la dualité entre le côté où on a beaucoup d'attention et d'amour, de respect par rapport aux enfants et à leurs émotions, et de l'autre côté, il y a la nature un peu absurde de ce qu'on lui demande de faire et de ce que, enfin, de la performance et tout ça. Donc, il y a cette profonde dualité. Est-ce que vous pouvez en parler un peu?
Moi, j'ai pas très bien compris la question.
I didn't really fully understand the question.
Just in terms of, I suppose, being cognizant of just, I mean, I guess the right way to be worded, it almost feels like you're making a documentary of someone shooting cinema verite and shooting sort of via street casting while you're doing it at the same time.
Donc, d'un côté, on a l'impression de voir un documentaire un peu de style cinéma vérité sur quelqu'un qui s'occupe de casting sauvage. Mais de l'autre côté, il y a beaucoup de respect par rapport aux émotions des enfants. Donc, vous pouvez parler de cette situation?
Oui, bah, c'est vrai qu'on n'avait pas envie de faire un film et de dire que c'était tout blanc ou tout noir. On voulait éviter... c'était pas manichéen, donc nous c'est un film qu'on voulait comme une critique, mais aussi un hommage au cinéma, et dans lequel nous-mêmes on s'incluait dans cette critique, donc c'était important effectivement qu'il y ait les deux pendants de ça existent, et pour montrer aussi que les choses n'étaient pas si simples et que les questions étaient ouvertes et qu'on ne répondait pas à toutes les questions, parce qu'il y a des questions auxquelles on n'arrive nous-mêmes pas vraiment à répondre.
Well, we didn't want to make a movie where we said that everything was black or white. We wanted to avoid that specifically. It's not as Manichaean as that. We wanted to make a movie that would be criticism, but at the same time, an homage, a tribute to cinema, in which we include ourselves in the criticism part. And we wanted to show that this duality, these two sides exist, and we wanted to show that things weren't as simple as that, and that the questions are open, and we didn't want to give answers to all of those questions, because to some of those questions we don't have answers either.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you on that for sure. And I mean, there is something else. I think a lot of that comes through very poignantly in the fight scene earlier on between the children, when he's telling them to get mad, but then he gets really mad. And I mean, that was, on one end, you could sort of see almost the humor in how he tries to direct it, but then just sort of the shift when the young man gets really mad. Like, how important was it for you to sort of have this, I guess maybe a linchpin moment where we see how these young people, you know, when it comes to street casting, won't necessarily understand the difference between acting mad and actually being mad?
Ça, on le voit beaucoup dans la scène dehors de l'école, quand les enfants ne s'aiment pas. Et là, c'est vraiment un moment pivot, quand on comprend la difficulté pour le jeune acteur de comprendre ce qu'il était en train de faire et la différence entre être fâché personnellement et après être fâché comme acteur. Donc, est-ce que vous pouvez parler un peu de ce moment et de cette situation?
Oui, alors ça a été une scène assez difficile à tourner pour nous, mais plus d'un point de vue technique, puisque finalement, c'est une des scènes qui a été le plus fabriquée en fait par les choix de découpage et de montage. Et oui, peut-être je te laisse déjà traduire ça.
It was a really complicated scene for us to shoot, mostly under a technical point of view, because it's one of the most heavily staged scenes. And then we worked on it a lot, also in terms of cutting and editing.
Et oui, c'est une scène, c'est vrai, qui questionne la nécessité, la nécessité d'être dans la vérité de l'émotion, ou est-ce que le cinéma fabrique l'émotion? Et c'est une question qui traverse tout le film. On voit à ce moment-là un réalisateur qui, plein de toutes ses bonnes intentions jusqu'ici, va en fait franchir les limites au nom de ce qu'il a envie d'obtenir et de sa vision artistique et de l'objet artistique qu'il a envie d'obtenir.
We are within the needs of the truth for the emotion. And then the question is, does cinema create the emotion? And this is a question that crosses the entire movie. It's a common thread. And there we see a filmmaker who has all the best intentions and he's proven that up to that point. And then at that point, that's when he crosses the line in the name of what he wants to obtain out of the movie and in the name of his artistic vision and of the artistic object that he wants to obtain at the end.
Et ce qu'on a envie de raconter aussi dans ce film, c'est l'idée que c'est le pouvoir du cinéma aussi sur les émotions de ses enfants, c'est-à-dire que le cinéma qui s'invite tout d'un coup comme un vecteur de libération des émotions et qui peut avoir une puissance cathartique sur ces enfants qui, là, particulièrement sur ce petit garçon Ryan qui a jamais appris à exprimer ses émotions autrement que par la colère et qui va apprendre à les gérer et à les exprimer et à les transformer et les sublimer autrement, quoi.
What we also wanted to tell in this movie is the idea of the power that cinema has over emotions for these kids. That is, cinema all of a sudden becomes like a vector to free those emotions with a cathartic power on those kids, in particular on that little boy, Ryan, who had never learned to express his emotions in any other way except for rage. And through his work on set, he learns to handle his emotions and to express them and transform them and sublimate them in a different way.
For sure. For sure. Now, I mean, in many ways, it would be very easy and simplistic for audiences to sort of view the filmmakers, or particularly the filmmaker, as the quote unquote antagonist or bad guy. But in watching it, it almost felt to me that the ignorance of the filmmakers on sort of the exploitive nature of what they were trying to do was almost more the bad guy than the characters themselves. Would that be a fair assessment of sort of the idea that you wanted this film to get across?
Donc, ça serait simple pour quelqu'un de dire superficiellement que le réalisateur est le mauvais, quoi, l'antagoniste. Par contre, moi, je pense un peu que c'est l'ignorance qu'il a par rapport au fait qu'il est en train d'exploiter, de faire quelque chose de pas bon pour les enfants. C'est l'ignorance qu'il a que est le facteur qui est mauvais. Est-ce que c'est correct de dire ça?
En fait, c'est un personnage qui crée des choses très différentes chez les gens à la sortie du film. Et donc, chacun a un petit peu sa façon en fonction de sa propre fragilité, de le trouver plus ou moins méchant, plus ou moins plus ou moins ignorant. Nous, on avait envie de dire que c'était un réalisateur sensible, plutôt talentueux, qui arrivait à avoir de belles scènes, parce qu'il y a 3 scènes dans le film auxquelles on assiste et où il se passe des choses fortes. Voilà, l'idée, c'était pas de dire qu'il était nul. Et effectivement, plutôt que l'ignorance, parce que en fait, dans cette séquence, il le manipule avec des choses qu'il a entendues pendant le casting et dont il se sert. Donc, c'était juste questionner en fait la limite qu'il y a quand on se sert et on manipule des enfants qui, en plus, sont des enfants fragilisés au service de l'art. Et en fait, la grande question aussi qui se poursuit dans le film, c'est jusqu'où peut-on aller pour l'art et voilà, et chacun a un petit peu son propre degré à ses propres limites, en fait.
Well, actually, that character generates different reactions in different people when they walk out of the movie theater, and everybody has a different approach to him based on their own fragilities, and they find him more or less bad or more or less evil or more or less ignorant. And we didn't want to, but what we wanted to say is that he was actually a pretty sensitive filmmaker and talented, and he achieves some beautiful scenes, because there are 3 scenes in the movie that we watch where there's strong things that come across. And the idea was that wasn't to say that he was bad. It wasn't so much about his ignorance, but what happens in that sequence is that he manipulates the kids with things that he had heard during the casting process, and he plays on those, he uses those. So what we wanted to do was to challenge the idea of the limits that one has as a filmmaker, and of what you take advantage of when you manipulate the kids, and in particular kids like those ones who are already fragile. And when you do that as a filmmaker in the name of art. So the overarching big question that we pursued during the film is, how far can we go in the name of art? And everybody has their own limit, their own constraints of what you can reach in this respect.
I would agree with that, because I mean, in many ways, what that character depicts is what so many directors do in general, in terms of working with their actors and evoking emotions. But when it comes to the issue of street casting and working with kids who don't have the experience, it definitely brings up a lot of issues, which, again, like you both said at the beginning, it's important to question, and it's important to just sort of at least be aware of and shine a light on it. I mean, just to put a bow on this, like for you both, as more and more audiences are starting to see this film, is that really, at the end of the day, what you're hoping for, just for audiences to come out with more questions than answers, to really sort of have this discussion on the nature of art and sometimes the costs that it can extract, especially from children?
Je suis tout à fait d'accord. Et on le voit souvent avec plein d'acteurs, même les adultes, mais en particulier avec le casting sauvage. Et donc, pour résumer ce qu'on a dit jusqu'à présent, vous voulez discuter à quel point on peut arriver par rapport à l'art et ce qu'on peut faire. Et donc maintenant, il y a beaucoup de gens qui vont voir ce film. Est-ce que ça serait correct de dire que vous voulez que le public sort avec plus de questions par rapport à avant de voir le film, et des questions sur la nature de l'objet artistique et ce qu'on a le droit de faire pour arriver à présenter nos idées, notre art.
Oui, c'est ça. C'est un film qui n'entend pas donner une réponse totalement optimiste ou totalement désenchantée sur le sujet, et qui ouvre des questions. Et c'est ce que donne à voir la scène, d'ailleurs, dans le bar, quand Judith, la jeune assistante réalisatrice discute avec les femmes du quartier et qu'on entend vraiment les deux paroles et qu'on comprend en fait les deux parties. On entend des intérêts divergents en fait d'un côté et de l'autre et pas une parole qui serait la bonne et compréhensible et qui, enfin voilà, que personne a raison en tout cas. Je te laisse déjà traduire ça.
Yes, it's a movie that doesn't want to provide a totally optimistic answer or an enchanted answer on this topic, and it wants to open up a lot more questions. And this is what we sort of tackle in the scene in the bar when there's the conversation between the woman and from the neighborhood and the young filmmaker, and they talk with the women in the neighborhood, and we really understand the two point of views, and we understand the reasons of both sides, and we realize that they have diverging interests, and on both sides there isn't anybody who's right, and there's good and understandable things on both sides, and nobody is right as such. Go ahead.
Et non, voilà, donc c'est un film qui plus globalement interroge la responsabilité du cinéma quand il s'introduit avec effraction, quoi, brutalement dans la vie de ses enfants. Et qu'est-ce que ce cinéma prend, qu'est-ce que ce cinéma laisse, est-ce que la rencontre va opérer, est-ce qu'elle va être salutaire? Et quand je parle de cette rencontre, c'est pas seulement, enfin c'est à la fois la rencontre avec cette équipe de cinéma, avec ces adultes qui travaillent dans le milieu du cinéma, mais aussi la rencontre avec le jeu, avec l'art en général.
Yes, so it's a movie that overall raises questions about the responsibility of cinema when it breaks into somebody's life, into the kids' lives, and we want to go over what it takes from them and what kind of ill feelings it can generate or go on the other side. Is it healthy or is it not? So we talk about this coming together, this meeting, and it's a meeting at the same time with the film crew, with the filmmakers, with the adults that work on set, on the film world, but also a meeting with acting and with art as a whole.
On a beaucoup dit que c'était des questions qu'on voulait laisser ouvertes et tout ça, mais quand même, pour finir, je voudrais dire que nous, on y croit et qu'on fait des films parce qu'on y croit. Donc, dans un sens, on a quand même cette position-là à la fin du film.
I just wanted to add that we said many times that we wanted to leave questions open and all of that, but before we finish, I just wanted to highlight that we believe in it a lot, and if we make movies, that is because we do believe in it, and so this stance of ours does come across at the end of the movie, after all.
Absolutely. You've made a movie I can believe in. But again, thank you so much for the time today. And again, congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.